This webinar will be focusing on prevailing safety regulation from a federal standpoint, how to instill a culture of safety at work, how your safety practices impact your EMR rating, how strong safety standards can improve productivity and boost work quality, and other safety-related topics. Please allow me to introduce Robert Lowry, Field Support Project Executive for Merriwether and Williams.
Good afternoon, everybody. So as she introduce myself, Robert Lowry, and also we'll be having another colleague of mine, Anthony Masson. He's our safety person that will be joining and doing half of this presentation as well. So my portion is going to be more the administrative portion of it. And when Tony joins in, he will be doing more of the field. So we already kind of moving on here. So I like to be very interactive. So if you have questions, please ask them, and Johanna will direct them to me. Like we said, this presentation will be made available to you afterwards. There are going to be some handouts or examples that I'm going to be showing. In order to receive those, you need to reach out to your contract development manager or account manager to receive those, because we would like to maybe walk you through those a little more so you can fully understand them. These are some great tools. And as we say, this is a generalized, but, as we know, safety is nationwide and is, dear to everybody, because you want to be able to go home to your family safely. So what is safety? Is the condition that gives you the freedom from hazards, risks, accidents, and which may cause injury, damage, and loss to material, property, and even death. As me, with my background being project manager for 30 years in the field before I retired from the field and coming into what I'm doing now, safety was a big part of my day-to-day, hour-to-hour thing as well. As a project manager, not just because of the superintendent foreman, I had to practice safety too. So I do have my OSHA 30. When you're on project sites, it's required that who's ever supervising have your OSHA. So safety, do not skimp on safety is what I'm always saying. When you're doing your proposals, when you're doing general conditions, safety supplies, put it in there because you're going to need it. PPE, whatever it takes, you need to have it in there. So how is safety important? It's a health workplace. It protects the workers' injuries from, injury and illness. Having a clean work site also reduces some of your, potential hazards that can cause someone to get hurt. If you got the owners doing tours of your site and it's messy, they step on a nail or something, that's an injury. So housekeeping is part of safety. So you just have to get into the mindset of that. And safety is from top down, bottom up, whatever it is. And it's not where you're going to be dictating. It's a group effort. You want to, work with everybody, even though if they're not on your team. If you see somebody that's doing something, unsafe, say, hey, buddy, you try this, put your safety glasses on. So it's a culture that you need to instill in their everyday practice out there. So are there any questions so far before I continue here? Because I'm going to take a break every once in a while to make sure that we can answer any questions.
No question for now.
Okay. All right. So the 5 core elements of a successful safety program. It's the culture. We've been talking about that, training and empowerment. Just mentioned about empowerment. You can reach out to anybody to say, hey, you need help there. The buddy system, never go out there by yourself to work, because if you get hurt, no one can call to get help. Training is it's an ongoing thing with training. You always want to train, because you get comfortable and you slack off a little bit, and that is when people get hurt. It's when you get too comfortable in what you're doing because you've been doing it day in, day out. It's like, oh, I got this. That's when people get hurt. Because if you're new to a task or a project, you're more aware. So, you stay more aware and focus of what's going on there. Um, hazard identification and control systems. Once you're trained, you have a safety management process that you put in place to easily identify hazards. Hazards, like I said, it could be chemicals, it could be nature. There is, nature could be natural disasters could be hazardous. There could be bees out there. Somebody could be allergic to animals, bees, so those are different types of hazard identifications that you need to be aware of when you're on job sites. Power lines, as you can see when you're out there, they always put those little tags on the power lines, overhead power lines, so you can see, oh, there's some power lines if you're using cranes, large equipment. Because if you hit the power lines, you can electrocute yourself or you can shut down a neighborhood. So there's a lot of effects if you're not paying attention to the job site and the hazards that surround you. And you want to focus on compliance. And OSHA regulates, everything. So here is, if you want to have a time to go into OSHA's website, there are different parts of OSHA. You have what's about the careers, the standards is where you really want to focus the most. You have the regulations, um, standard interpretations, requirements. So this is a great training, federal registration here. It tells you you can just spend time to go through this is what I'm trying to get at, get familiar with it. There's different safety topics that's in here, hazardous communication. So as you are working with your team and you're starting to do tailgates and safety meetings, there's things you can go in here and pull out. Fall prevention is a topic that you can have a tailgate on, and which is great because as you're doing work above 6 feet, you have to be tied off, right? How are you going to tie people off to be safe? You can't tie it off to a ladder because if the ladder falls over, you're still going to get hurt. Being aware of everything. So just take time to go through this. And when Tony comes in, he's going to go a little bit more into the safety and OSHA here. But this is just letting you know that there is websites with topics that you can do. And, so there is that. And, always continuous improvement. Just because you have a safety in place, you can always find ways to improve it. It is, you know, important is what I'm trying to emphasize. So, maybe if we could say how many people have a safety program already in place, maybe if you can put it in the chat, just say yes. So I can kind of get a feel about, who am I talking with here? Like I said, hold frequent safety meetings to retain and, your employees so they get used to safety, be aware of it. When I was out in the field, I did safety, because walking around. Then when I came home, I never turned that safety brain off. And around your house, you can be looking, oh man, that's unsafe. There's some exposed wires. If you're doing projects around your house, safety glasses, most people forget about putting safety glasses on. It's like, oh, it's not going to happen to me. Something can fly in your eye at home. Same thing at work. Hard hat. If you're trimming trees, the branch breaks, so safety is a 24/7. So, Johanna, did we get any responses from my question there?
Right, we have some yes in the Q&A box. There is a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do all contractors require a OSHA 30-hour certification annually or per job site?
Okay, OSHA, there's two. You have OSHA 10, that's more of a general, like your workers, your crafts, your laborers can do it OSHA 10. Now, if you're supervising a foreman or management, you want to have the OSHA 30. That goes into a lot more details because you're supervising people out there. There's really no expiration on the certifications. Once you get it, it's good to go, but still you want to do refreshers. We do offer OSHA 30 training once a year in our program here. So if you're enrolled into our program, you will be getting an email in 2024 of the OSHA 30 class and exam. So it's a 5 days, 8 hours a day. Then at the end, you take your exam and you get your certification. And like I said, it's at no cost to you because our sponsors are paying for it. So when it comes out, I highly recommend that you sign up for that OSHA 30 class.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So moving on over to some programs, some forms and checklists. There's the injury and illness prevention program. That's a IIPP. And that is something that contains all of your plans in one document. And, if you don't have one, you could download it from the internet and fill one out. But, if there is a company that's in your area that can help you with that, more personalized, it's better because this is when you're going for some jobs, they're going to require you to have your IIPP manual. So getting that put in place, I will suggest you to start now. It takes quite a bit of time to get it developed, but it's well worth the money spent to do it. Within the manual, you're going to have the emergency action plan. So what I'm going to do now is kind of show you some of these examples, and then Tony will later on go into a little more details. But these are templates that we do have for you that you can use, and hopefully you can read that. I'm just trying to, get your generalized, emergency personnel names and phone numbers. You should have a project directory for every job that you're on, locating where is the nearest hospital or urgent care or whatever, making sure that you have a first aid kit, fire extinguisher at all jobs at all times. It talks about evacuation routes. Like I said, emergency phone numbers, paramedics, ambulance. And this should, like I said, stay on site at all times. Whoever's supervising your job needs to have this with them because anything can happen at any time and they need to go to this book manual because, it's all about seconds here of saving someone's life or whatever it is. Utilities, you want to, have their phone numbers if you're doing underground work and you happen to cut a a power line or a water line, you need to have those numbers so you can give them a call quickly to assist you in case there's something, emergency there. These routes, evacuation routes in your procedures. It sounds like a lot, but you need to take the time to put this together at the beginning, and then it becomes second nature. Chemical spills, it used to be is the safety data sheets. Having those for any chemicals that you have on site that you can be working with goes in a book because if someone happens to spill some of the chemicals on them, what's the procedure? You're going to go to that safety data sheet and read what's the procedure, what do you got to do, is it reactive to anything else? So that is another piece that goes into this chemicals. You say, oh, I don't work with chemicals, but you might have glue or adhesive. That's a chemical. What's this safety data sheet for that? As an owner, they sometimes will require you to have those as part of your closeout too. So you want to keep everything here. So like I said, this is a template. You can fill it out, read it, and it's just a good thing to incorporate on your job site. Bomb threats, with a lot of the crimes that's going on now. What is your procedure if you're at a job site and people start to pick at the job, or bomb threats or whatever, earthquakes or floods, hurricanes? That is a procedure you want to protect your crew as well. So that's a little bit about the emergency action plan. The next one, we're going to talk about the site-specific safety plan. And this is another one where, is required, and hopefully it's going to load here. And just a second, let me shift it over. Sorry. And it's also, you go through what's the intent of this. Um, I have to kind of put some of this together, from different ones. But as you can see, it's a form. You fill it out. So we've set it up to where you can fill it out and you have it on site here. Brief scope, description of the project. If you're a subcontractor, you need to fill this out as part of maybe some of your documentation that you need to submit. Yeah, so that, as if I'm the general contractor, I need to know that you have a safety plan, because you can't really use mine because it might be different. It's tailored to me. So you want to make sure is that yours is tailored to you and your crew, but overall it all, is cohesive, global, it needs to happen. So, it's like life saving. So anyway, I'm not going to bore you with this, but it's a great tool here to have as well. The other one is your job hazards analysis, JHAs. This one your crew needs to buy in on the job hazard analysis. And this form, you should fill it out. And it's just an Excel spreadsheet. A lot of these forms I'm showing you are Excel spreadsheets, and it's easy to use. But it's basically with a job hazard analysis. It's like if you have a job that you're doing a task out there, what are your steps for that one task that you're doing? If you're painting, okay, if you're painting up on the second floor, what are some of your tasks? Okay, you got to put the ladder. Is it there? What's the hazardous that's with that step there? And then what are controls you're going to be putting in place to prevent from an injury? And then, the RAC is the probabilities. Is it extremely high risk, or moderate risk? So you're going to rank each step as you are, putting this together. You're going to list your equipment. Are your guys trained to use the equipment? Are they competent? You want to put that in. You inspect the equipment. There's some places where Tony will kind of chime in a little bit here is, ladders got to be tagged, right, Tony? For safety,
Yeah.
that's been inspected.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, great. I also wanted to say you want to make sure that the manufacturer stickers that describe the weight limits and all of the manufacturer info, OSHA can bust you on that too if they see a ladder that all the stickers are worn off or scraped off, and you can just reach out to the manufacturer of the ladder or ladder system or anything, and they're happy to send you some new stickers. So that's another small thing you could think about.
Okay. Yeah, Tony, so I was just kind of going through some of it. So, so the next one, and then what you want to do, you want to get everybody to print, sign off, because if there is an accident and they say, well, you never trained me on that, we didn't do this. You have documentation that you are aware of it, you participated in the toolbox, etc. Signatures, you can't sign for everybody. You want individual people to sign their own, that they acknowledge that they have went through some of these processes here. And the pre-task planning is another one that you can use. Tony, if you want to chat a little bit about this, if not, we can wait until we get to your section, then we'll come back to it.
Yeah, I'm going to chat about that later for sure.
Okay. All right. So like I said, Tony's here. Like I said, he is more of our safety guy in the field. So he's going to be talking a little bit more about those. But EMR, experience modification rate, is it's basically it is your EMR is based off of your insurance, which is accidents, incidents. If you're at a one, you can, it's average in this industry. But once you go above one, then your premium goes up because you're having recordable accidents, incidents, and accidents that you're having to record and report to OSHA, which also goes to your insurance. and your insurance premium goes up. So once again, EMR, if you're bidding jobs and they're going to require EMR of 1, and you know you don't have it, that could be like, hey, my EMR is a 1.1, would you consider it? Or if you're doing pre-qualifications, some of these larger general contractors say a 1, and if you're above that, you can't get pre-qualified. So knowing what your EMR is, you will most of the time get this after 3 years of being in existence. And if not, your insurance provider can provide you with a letter. It's like a default letter of a 1. So that is, a lot of stuff, because, it's all comes back into it. Like I said, if your EMR is greater than 1, your workers' compensation claim insurance, is higher. You have claims, insurance risk mitigations. How are you going to bring that down? What are your steps once you have, a high EMR? What are you going to be putting in place to bring that number down? It increase, and it's there for 3 years. So once it goes up, it's there for 3 years. So you still want to be putting measurements in place to bring that number down. That is, once again, with the safety out in the field, recording your man hours, all that. Tony's going to talk about the OSHA logs 300s and what that is about. So, I mean, it's important. We can coach you on the mitigations for EMR to help you. So that is part of our services as well. So one thing before I turn it over to Tony, we have one of our resources has a platform called Contractor Foreman, and it's a really user-friendly program that you can house all your safety data records. You can house your daily reports, everything in this, and it's a dashboard that you can see right away what you are, so as you're having safety meetings, you can record it in here, and it can be on an iPad, iPhone, not iPhone, mobile phone, whatever, to be able to do this. And then, it's also with the incidents logs, you can see a dashboard here, and a snapshot is like, what is going on with your company here. And it's really easy to read. And they will also do some training for you. Your daily logs, reports, and logs can be housed in here. This is a program that you can use, and it houses everything, so it helps you stay organized and efficient, and it generates reports for you that you have to submit to OSHA, whoever is also being generated in here. So it's just a little bit about it. I'm just kind of gave some screenshots so you can see what's going on there. So, if you are, let me back up, sorry. So if you are interested in this contractor foreman, and not only does it do safety, you can also do your bids, you can do billing. It is a really comprehensive program that is economic feasible for you guys. So they have teamed up with us. So if you're interested in wanting to get to know more about the contractor profile, at the end when we do the survey, please make sure that you say you're interested, so I can give your information over to the rep for contractor foreman, and he can then go into more of a sales pitch for you, so you can understand all the ins and outs. We've had 2 of our contractors that started recently using this contractor foreman, and they love it. It has really made them efficient. And one good thing is there's an annual fee, but because you're enrolled into the program, you will get a discount. And believe me, it's not that expensive, but it's worth the investment to do business with the company to improve. So with that, I'm going to now turn it over to Tony. So if you have, Joanna, are there any other questions in there?
Hi, Robert. Hi, Tony. There is one question,
Mm-hmm.
and then someone else said it's a good program. Is the OSHA class in English, or can it be in Spanish?
We can do both.
About an OSHA 10 or 30 or what?
Either of them.
I think we were talking.
you can take it in either. It's available online in multiple languages. I highly recommend, if you are going to get OSHA 10 or OSHA 30 for your employees or yourself, that you try to find something in person, because you retain a lot more information from an in-person class. It's more work and you got to drive somewhere, but I'll tell you, a lot of the online stuff doesn't retain as much, because you're just kind of waiting for that timetable to tick and get through the timed pages on your class, and you don't really take it all in like you would. But the 10 and the 30, depending on who you go through, is available in multiple languages.
Right. And the one that we do annually is in English, unfortunately.
It is.
But yeah. But like you said, we can find it in Spanish as well. But ours is in English.
Thank you.
Anything else, Johanna?
Oh,
Okay.
that's it. Mhm.
Okay. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Tony and let him introduce himself. And Tony, we'll go ahead and let you take it away at this point, sir.
Hey, everybody. I'm Anthony Molson, Tony. I'm a safety manager. I work at Merriwether Williams Insurance Services. I've worked out at San Francisco International Airport for the last 10 years through risk management at SFO. And we're boots on the ground, safety management and loss and mitigation for all the large contractors and the programs out there, from the capital improvement programs to the ascent programs, that some of these jobs are $2+ billion, and some of them are 200,000. It just depends. But that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. I've been in safety a couple of decades now. I think I've been in construction, hate to say it, but 35+ years.
You like me. Yeah.
I might be dating myself a little bit there. That's okay. So yeah, I'm going to focus a little bit right now on safety culture. And sometimes safety culture gets swept a little bit under the carpet and not talked about or not addressed enough in the construction industry, especially with newer, younger construction companies. What I'll be talking about today throughout the rest of these slides will be mainly based in construction. So if you have a company that's not a construction company, but you're interested in learning more about this type of stuff from a different point of view, we can also help you with that too. But I come from a construction background and now construction safety background. So top-down safety culture in construction is exactly what it sounds like. If you start to get the top people in the company to buy in to improving safety culture, it's just a trickle-down effect that you can't stop. It's infectious. Everyone underneath will always look to the supervisors, will always look to the owner of the company for the example. And what example are you setting, in safety on your job sites and off the job sites as well? Safety culture is an invisible power in an organization that drives influences and guides the behaviors of all members. So that invisible power is not something that stays invisible. You make it more present, and you build it in to where it is a built-in moment. You walk up to a situation in construction, and if your safety culture is top notch, all of your workers immediately start thinking, hey, what can I do to slow down for a second and to make this a safer environment for me and my workmates so no one gets hurt? And culture lives in the perceptions of people, what they believe is the right thing to do. And the right thing to do, it can be 5,000 different things on a job site compared to, who thinks of what and who values what out on the job sites. And that can be something that's learned and improved over time. Next slide, please. So the whole thing about that, the right thing to do, management is going to define that. The upper management, the owners, the superintendents, the people that everyone looks to, the supervisors out on those job sites, that's who's going to define that right thing to do. And it's done by example. You have to communicate and translate that to your workforce, and you have to design all the specific processes and implement them to make sure that that happens. And people will listen. Everyone listens. Believe it or not, you think that, oh, I've been working with this guy, and he just doesn't listen to me out on the job site, and that seems like a common thing. But if you start setting that example and you start living that better safety culture on your job site, you will eventually get everyone on board. I promise you that. And then also, you know, the leadership of your company is going to measure what is happening out there, and you can either be proactive in your safety culture and improve that safety culture by seeing what's happening. And there's a lot of ways you can look at that, from really involving your employees, which, I mean, that's a huge thing. If you can get everyone down to the laborers in the field to be hands-on with your safety program and with your task planning and with your site-specific safety plan and your JHAs, all of that is a huge part. But you have to give that example. Next slide,
Right.
please.
No, I just want to chime in on it. Sorry, Tony,
Yeah,
I'll
please
be
do.
chiming in. Like I said, when I was a project manager in the field, hey, I led by example. It was safety, PPE, the hat, glasses, gloves, safety, the vest, everything. So whenever I was out there, man, that's what I was doing. So my team always saw me with PPE on and the um, toolbox meetings, everything. I was there. I didn't have to be, but that was showing that, hey, if I want my team and crew subs to do it, I'm going to be out there with them and coaching them. And, to this date, I still do that. I'll go to a project site and I'll see something that could be a little shaky. I might call it out, but, we're here to help. So that was what Tony was talking about, the leadership from the top down.
And that's huge. It is huge.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest things. And another example on the other end of that stick is, there's a contractor at SFO, which shall not be named, that I've been working with for a lot of years. And the owner of that specific company, every time he visits the job site, he doesn't have the proper PPE on. Never does. Never has gloves that are required on certain jobs. Never has the right high vis, gear on, never has safety glasses. Sometimes he'll be out there in dress shoes or tennis shoes. And we always have to, if I'm out there, I kick his butt off the job site. But
Right.
he doesn't like me very much because of that. And it's one of those things where their safety culture is lacking. And I always try to give their crews extra attention because they don't have that top down example.
Hmm.
They have someone who is not committed to improving the safety culture. It's just kind of, I've been doing this 50 years and I don't need to listen. And that's going to get someone hurt, unfortunately.
Right.
Is what things can boil down to, which, you know, you never ever want that. So always be that leader, always be that example out there. Go ahead
Yeah.
and throw that next slide up, bud.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's on the same team when you're out there, regardless of what company you're with. We're all the same team. Help
Exactly.
everybody out. Yeah,
We're all human beings, and
yeah,
everybody wants your fellow human being on that job site to go home safe with all their appendages and go see their kids, and that's what I want, and that's what I always wanted. I mean, even when I started swinging a hammer framing in the 80s when I was young, it was very dangerous to be working on a construction site back then, and there was a lot of machismo and that type of thing, and all of that stuff is disappearing over the decades, and there's safety is cool. You're not uh, you know lesser in any way if you say, hold on, we need to stop this and do it in a safer fashion. That just means that you care about the person next to you. So a strong safety culture, it's really the practice of influencing minds towards shared values through a personal safety ethic. And, you know, mostly in business, you don't want emotion involved, but in safety, you want there to be that emotional connection to your safety program. You want to have you want to have your workers have that personal safety ethic that is strong. And a lot of times that goes right back up to that top down moment where it's led by example. You know, your superintendents in the field and your supervision in the field, if they know that you as an owner of this company feel a certain way about something, they're not going to cross that, and they're not going to cross you in that way. And if you do it positively, it's a huge thing. And the degree to which safety considerations are integrated into the decision making process. Now that's huge. You know, so if you start to build your safety culture and it starts to get better and better and better, and everyone is empowered out on that job site to make that a better moment, you won't have the fear of stopping work. You won't have the fear of saying, hey, Tony, hold on a second, man, you're not tied off correctly, or there isn't the right protection in that trench. You know, when someone walks up to a situation, as safety professionals, a lot of times, Robert and I, if we're on a job site, we just walk out and I can see 10 things wrong with something immediately because that's my focus and that's my job. But, you know, it takes a while for other folks to get into that moment where, you know, they can just walk up to anything and not look at the production aspect and the money. They can go, hold on, you know, someone might get hurt here. So that degree of those considerations changes as your safety culture gets better. Next slide, please. You know, this is the same horse that we're beating up here. You know, the leadership commitment to safety, it's illustrated through attitudes, through behavior. If the boss of a company is out on a job site and he's sloughing off safety and being really hard nosed towards, say, the owner's rep for safety or the safety manager for the controlling contractor or any safety in general, I see a lot of bad attitudes from time to time over these, you know, years of working towards safety. Like safety is something that you know, is an inconvenience. They can't get their job done if somebody's always you know, yelling at them about safety. Well, that attitude is really important, and that leads to those behaviors and actions and inactions. And someone's inaction towards something is a lot of times with safety, it's much worse than acting in some other way, whether it be a behavior that's good or bad. But if you see something, you always have to say something. It's so important, even if it's not your crew. If you see something that is worrisome to you, you know, bring it up. Don't be the person that didn't bring it up and then that person got hurt or even worse. I was working on a job in Oakland, California, and I walked up to a very large trench that they had tried to bench the trench as their mitigation for the safety, and the bench was wrong. The angles were wrong. You could tell immediately by looking at it. And there was about 8 people in the bottom of that trench. And I immediately stopped work and said, "Hey guys, get out. You know, like we gotta talk about this, but just get out of there, you know, quick." And so they got out, and we all came together, and we're talking on the side of the trench, about 8 feet away from the trench, and one of the sides completely caved in, and a couple, at least 2 or 3 tons of dirt just smashed down right where 8 guys were standing beforehand. And it's always my biggest example of the moments. And right standing there, who was the operator of one of the equipment, was the supervisor, was the superintendent. And he was always someone who was pushing production and always someone who was kind of lacking on the safety front. And after that, his attitude changed quite a bit, because it can happen to you on your site. And you know, you're not immune. No one is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And just want to say, you know, make sure that you have your barricades in place. You know, if there is caution tape, you know, have signs that, you know, do not cross, because they're there for a reason. So you're protecting the pedestrians. If you're working,
Especially
you know,
in public, right?
yeah, public works or whatever it is in the public, even, yeah, you want to protect the pedestrians, not only your team, everybody needs to be protected. So taking the time to put the barricades up, you know, if there's a fence that needs to go up or caution tapes, you know,
Right. And the right colors, you know, red
yeah,
means do not cross, yellow means caution, but you can cross if you're on the job site, you know?
yeah, you know, even your inspectors come on the site, you know, they're, yes, you know, they
Yep.
need to adhere to, you know, your safety protocols as well. So it's your right, you know, to exercise this safety.
And a lot of time with exclusion zones and red zones and red tape, what a lot of contractors will do is it's part of their safety program that there has to be an ownership form taped to that barricade or to that red tape. And so if someone walks up and says, what the heck, I need to get over here, you know, why can't I go in here? There's no one in this spot or whatever. There's a number, a name, the contractor, everything is on a form taped right to it. And if they have a question, they can reach out. And a lot of times that will keep them from ducking under that tape or going through that little area of the barricade and creating a hazard. So
Yeah.
that's something to think about as well.
Okay.
So safety documentation, I mean, obviously, you know, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this. You could spend hours talking about all this stuff for sure. But there's some basics that you really want to make sure you have online, whether that be electronically on your iPad that you keep in the truck or physically in a binder. You know, your injury and illness prevention program, your IPP. Now that's an overall safety document for the entire company. That means everyone that's in the office. That means everyone that's out on the you know, job sites. It's overall. It's there's probably millions of links that you can hit online to get really deep into an IAPP, and obviously OSHA has some pretty good stuff on their on their listing of how job sites would, you know, go about having a proper IAPP for your company. I'm sorry, companies, not job sites. But when you're talking about job sites in specific job sites, you want to have a site-specific safety plan. And so, like, for example, I work out at San Francisco International Airport. Now, that is not a typical place to have a construction zone. So if you're post security, if you're out in a secured zone, there's all kinds of different things you have to worry about with your job site and with your personnel. Not only just the hazards that come up from the work itself, but you have airplanes, you have fuel, you have, I mean, you name it. There's a, you know, FOD that can get out and get inside a jet engine from your job site, you know. So would I put that in my IAPP for the company? Absolutely not. That's a form that is an overall injury and illness prevention program. But for any job site that you have outside of that purvey, you definitely want to have a specific plan for that. And you want to know, you know, what that entails. You want to work closely with either the owner or the controlling contractor, and it's your responsibility, if you're the controlling contractor, to have a detailed site specific plan. Now, you know, and inside that site specific plan, you know, it depends on the job. You know, you might be doing concrete work, so you have to have a silica plan, you know, for exposure. It might be 100 degrees outside, so you need to really make sure you have a comprehensive heat illness plan. And these are things that OSHA, if they come on your job site, that they're going to ask for, and they're going to ask for it usually right away. And, you know, they'll be like, I want to see these plans. And if you don't have it, you're definitely going to get cited for it. And having an emergency action plan for all employees is important, whether it's for folks in the office, like we were talking about, or it's for the ever-changing job site. And that's the thing about construction, is job sites change daily almost, you know. So you have to update these living documents. You know, these are the injury and illness prevention program isn't necessarily always a living document. That's something for the blanket for the company. But your action plans, your emergency action plans, your site specific safety plans, your you know, pre-task planning and your JHAs, all that stuff, you know, those are all living documents that change. So when you have your emergency action plan, you know, you have to think about what's happening at the time. You don't want to go 6 months later and have the same emergency action plan. All of the exits have changed. You know, there's now walls where there wasn't walls before. You know, you need to think about that type of stuff and make sure that things are updated. And you know, when you're trying to complete your tasks out in the field, an important document is your JHA. It's also called an AHA, activity hazard analysis, and even some companies call their AHAs pre-task plans. But you can have a pre-task plan, and you can also have a JHA and an AHA, because the JHA and AHA really get down to brass tacks on specifics, like, okay, I have to build this ladder that goes over this, goes over this section of Earth, right? There you go. He's throwing up some of that stuff. So a pre-task plan can be something overall, about a larger task involved, but your JHAs are specific to that job or to that activity. And you really want to be as detailed as you can with your JHAs and your AHAs, because you want your workers to be involved. You want your workers to sign off. You want your workers to be writing that. This isn't something that the superintendent does at a desk before he goes out to the field. This is something that he does with the workers. And like Robert was saying before, in any training moment, in any pre-task planning, in any JHA, always have all the workers read it, understand it, because there's many languages that it can be in. And just because someone's shaking their head, really make sure that they understand it and sign off on it. Because it could mean the difference between them going home that day or them getting injured that day. So that's just a super important aspect of it.
Yeah.
And there's tons of examples out there online. I mean, there's so many examples of JHAs and AHAs, and some are more simple than others, some are more detailed, but you're not going to have any problem finding one that you like to work with. And both Robert and myself can help send people examples as well.
Yep.
If need be.
Yep, sure can.
So, the OSHA 10 and the OSHA 30 hour. A lot of people when they're either a little bit newer to the construction field or they haven't been exposed to a better safety culture, they put a lot of hawk into the OSHA 10 hour and the OSHA 30 hour certifications. My point of view is this: the OSHA 10 hour and the OSHA 30 hour are a great place to start. They're a great place to get your feet wet with safety in construction. Does that really mean that if you get an OSHA 30 hour that you can just, go be an expert safety individual out on a job site? No, it's not really what I consider a good qualification towards a safety manager or safety engineer or a safety person that's chosen for a company for a job site. But it is an excellent place to start, and I do recommend it. I mean, I wish a 30 hour was required for everyone who had to set foot on a job site. I think we'd be in a lot better shape. But if you have a designated safety person out there, you want to make sure that you're doing the best that you can as an owner of your construction company to make sure that they're qualified to be that safety individual. And in my opinion, the 30 hour is not enough. You really need to take it a little bit further. And there's a lot of programs out there through the Board of Certified Safety Professionals that aren't super expensive, and they can get some certifications that are just a little bit above that put them in a better spot for a better safety culture.
So Tony, I have a question. We're talking about this designated safety person. And if you're on a job, yeah, I know, but if you're on a job and you don't have a person, is that someone that you can hire?
Most smaller construction companies can't afford a safety manager or director. I mean, it's just not in the budget. Once you get to a certain level as a safety professional, it's not cheap to get you on board for the most part. So a lot of companies and a lot of controlling contractors know that about their subcontractors. So they say, hey, we're leaving it up to you. You're run your own construction company. Who is your designated safety person? And they don't require you have a safety manager or someone who went to school for safety or has years of experience and has better qualifications. But they just say, we have to put someone down here. Well, once you put that name down there, and he's in your company, it's your responsibility to make sure that he is trained. Now, I'm not saying you have to send someone to college for safety, but you definitely need to make sure that they understand how safety works and And as the owner of the company, and we're talking about safety culture and that top-down method, it's super important that you don't look at it as that OSHA 30 is the qualification that they need to be the safety person that is in the field for you. So there's a lot of programs that don't require a designated safety person that only does safety. There's a lot of contractors who don't require that. And
Mhm.
so what you have is you end up having a lot of guys out in the field that are the safety people for their company, but they're not necessarily that skilled in that arena. So as the owner of the company, it's really up to you to make sure that your safety personnel, whoever that may be, because if you have 5 employees or say 20 employees, you know, you're not going to hire someone who makes 6 figures to be your designated safety. It just is not a realistic thing. So because we're in that position and because we see a lot of designated safety guys out in the field that are also the superintendent or also play another role in the
Mhm.
company, you just need to make sure that they're trained.
Right. And that also includes having your first aid CPR too, as
You
part
got
of it.
that. And
Yeah.
that's like, these are basics,
Yeah.
first aid, CPR, get them some classes, make sure that these guys, uh, you know, can handle something when it does go down, because unfortunately it's a very dangerous thing, construction,
Yeah.
and things
Sure.
happen.
Sure does. Sure does though. All right, Tom, we'll get back here. So we're still talking about the OSHA logs and all that. You want
Yeah.
me to go to the
So
website or?
yeah. So OSHA logs. Just you don't need to go to that if you don't want to. So the OSHA 300 is something that's required federally by OSHA, and you need to have that available and have at least 5 years deep that you keep records with your OSHA log. And the link that I put up there is a really good link, because it's an OSHA link, and they run through everything, and they really go through how to fill out your OSHA logs, and it's really descriptive. It's way too much for us to touch base on, in a presentation like this. But I do recommend, if you have that link, make sure you have that link. And if you really want to learn more about the OSHA 300, the OSHA 300A, and the OSHA 301, the
Mhm.
requirements are, annually OSHA does require that you electronically file your 300A. And the 300A, what's the difference between the 300 and 300A? The 300 is a log, and the A, it really breaks down and summarizes those incidences. And it's just a more detailed version of the 300, and that's what you have to submit annually electronically if you have more than 10 employees. And now the 301 is just kind of like an incident form. It's a report for a specific incident. If you want to use that, it's pretty comprehensive. It's a good one, but there isn't requirements on the 301 to submit your 301s or anything like that. And keep in mind all the people that are out there from different states. There's a couple of things that are federal here, but your state might have, another way of looking at it, and they might require something slightly different, or slightly, improved as far as filing those specific things. And another thing about the OSHA 300, a lot of times if you're bidding a job, and that'll be part of your pre-qualification moment, where some of those larger contractors and some of those owner controlled insurance program jobs, they're going to want to see that OSHA 300. They're going to see that list. They want to see your recordable injuries, know your experience modification rate. All of that stuff plays in. And so, if you don't have that handy and you don't know what that is, that could hurt you a little bit.
Yeah. So we will have this law, but yeah, it's important to fill this stuff out, weekly, monthly, whatever it is. and submit it, because we say that also helps with your insurance premium.
You
You know,
bet.
you want to bring that down. So having 3 years of these OSHA logs, you can prove to your insurance broker and everyone to think, hey, you know what, we have zero loss for so many man hours, because it's all calculated off man hours and the
Yep.
number of incidents. So you're
And when
tracking
you
all
have
of that.
and when you don't have a lot of employees, it doesn't take much to take
Much.
your experience modification rate through the roof.
Yep. All it takes is one.
Yep, and it can really mess with you. Even if the numbers are amazing, everything's perfect in the world, and then they say, "Hey, everything looks good. Let's see your experience modification rate," and you have a 3.25 rate, and they're just like, "Oops, sorry," you
Yeah.
know, and you really want to pay attention to that.
Yep.
So so yeah, your designated safety person for your team. I think that we were really touching base on that before, and you know, it can be in these circumstances. Your designated safety person can, can wear many hats. It can also be your competent person, but every job site does need that competent person out there. And a lot of times with the smaller companies who have very minimal employees, you'll have, your superintendent will also be your competent person, and he'll also be your designated safety person. That can happen, especially with the smaller companies. So a competent person means one who is capable of identifying an existing or predictable hazards in the surroundings or working conditions which are unsanitary, hazardous, or dangerous to employees. And the most important thing, and who has the authorization to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate them. Now, not everyone has that on a job site. You can't say your competent person is the guy that you just hired who's 20 years old, who has only worked on a construction site since you got him on board. That's not a good idea. You definitely want to make sure that the competent person that you have on your job site is someone who is experienced in the field and trained, and you've given the authority to make those big decisions out in the field. And sometimes, and I see it often with smaller companies, that's the safety person as well. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there can be a little bit of a contradiction when you have your superintendent, who's also your competent person, who is also your safety person. He's driving towards making that dollar, and he's also the safety person. So you want to really be careful with that too, because if you have a safety person who isn't afraid to shut things down and to stop those dollars for a minute, that's what's important. You really need to empower your safety individual to have that type of power. Because if they're afraid to say anything, if they're afraid to stop some dangerous work because they're like, oh man, I was looking at the clock and it's Friday, and my God, if we don't get this done Monday, we're in big trouble. That just tears down your safety culture, and it stills in their brain that money is more important than humans, and it is not the way to go. It is not the way to go. And so the role of your designated safety person, I think we've outlined pretty well, but I encourage to go beyond those 10 30-hour moment, when you're doing training and you're signing them up for things. Invest the time in them, and they will also understand that you take safety very seriously and that you care more than the average person does. And so when you say, yeah, you're the safety guy, I'm not checking a box just so I can get my team in the door and get to making money. I'm checking a box because you believe in that person and you want them to have that safety role. But, put your money where your mouth is what I would say when it comes to that. And qualifications, that's what we're beating up here. The qualifications, that don't just think that, because someone spent a few hours online doing a 30-hour, that they're going to be the best safety choice out on your job site. It's a good place to start, but it shouldn't be the only thing. And qualifications can be anything from experience. It doesn't have to be school. It doesn't have to be certifications on the computer. I mean, it could be someone who understands safety and has learned it over 15 20 years of being out on job sites too. Record keeping, we've already touched base on that quite a bit with your safety documents and your OSHA logs. Make sure that you have that. And there's in a lot of states, you can call up OSHA and ask them for help, and they can They can help you out. You'd be surprised. They have a referral line in California for sure that I've used many times myself. And I call them up in Oakland or whatever city, and I'm like, hey, is it okay for this to be happening? Because I'm a little clear. It's really hard to read the regs on this, and I've even had OSHA come out on purpose to a couple of my job sites and meet up with these guys and say, how can we be better? What can we do here? And they're not out there to write you citations. When you do that, they love it. And so
Yeah.
don't always be afraid of Cal OSHA or OSHA or Fed OSHA or whatever, is in your particular state as far as your state run stuff versus the Fed. They really want you to succeed. It's very rare that you're going to run into the guys who are just want to crush you. They do exist, but I'm telling you right now, if you want to improve your safety culture and your safety plans, everything, you can really lean on them. You'd be really surprised. Um, as far as job site audits go for your designated safety person, often at San Francisco International Airport, I'll hit a job 2 or 3 times in a day. If I'm already cruising from one end of the airport to the other, why not just go spend another hour over there and just go through? I would say daily is an excellent recommendation. Sometimes through insurance services, guys like us, sometimes we get hired to come out weekly. Sometimes we get hired to come out monthly. Monthly doesn't do much. It might check a box for the insurance program that is going on, but you really want to get out there every day, get a feel for the job site, get a feel for your guys, make sure that there's trust and an open culture there. And when you're out there more, when that designated safety person is out there more, guess what the workers do? Guess what everyone does on site? Oh, that guy cares. You know what? He's out here. He's not messing around. He doesn't come out every once in a while to check a box. He really cares about me, and that starts to sink in. Now, managing incidents and injuries, I don't want to get too crazy with this, but I really wanted to put this in here because if you have your designated safety person, they're going to be the person that is dealing with an incident that happens or an accident or injury. They're going to be writing up the report. They're going to be finding the root cause. They're also going to be potentially taking this individual to where? The hospital, maybe, or a clinic, or having like someone like on site, the company on site. They're in a van and they can come to your job site and they can sometimes take care of something that could have been a recordable injury and keep it a first aid. Now, let me be very clear here. I am not saying, oh, you want to try to, make sure that everything's a first aid and don't take care of your people. That is the opposite. I'm saying that I've seen this a lot in this industry where someone gets a first aid injury and someone who's inexperienced on the job site and doesn't have the plan in place and doesn't have a listed spot to go to, they just take them to the emergency room. Oh yeah, he did something to his finger, and I just want to make sure, and once you walk in the door at the emergency room, it's a recordable injury. Once you get an x-ray, it's a recordable injury. Once they say, hey, here's some prescription Tylenol that you could have got at Safeway, that's a recordable injury. And that does hurt. That does hurt your business, and it hurts your insurance, and it hurts your XMOD rate. And so I encourage you to make sure that you and your designated safety person know how to properly manage an injury when it happens, because there can be something that can be very simply handled if you take someone to a clinic versus the emergency room. The same doctor will look over the same moment, and if you can avoid having that recordable, it's going to be a big thing for you as time goes by. So just be very careful about who you're designating as that safety person who might be managing your incidents and injuries that take place on your job site.
Hey, Tony, question. So, if I am a worker out there and I get hurt, but I don't want to report it, and I go home and then over the weekend, that injury, you laughing, becomes to a point where I have to go to the hospital. How do you handle that?
it's still all valid, and you're still going to get hit with it as a construction company.
Right.
You know, it's not uncommon for things to manifest a little different once someone gives a little bit of time to an injury. You can see, you know, there are the humans and the workers out there to take advantage of the system. That does happen, but you know, you don't see it a ton. Really, if a guy says, "Hey, man, you know, I thought I was fine. I didn't want to say anything, but my knee started to swell up, and now I can't move. I had to go to the emergency room." I mean, there is very little you can do about that. But the thing that I will say, Robert, that you can do to improve that is have that instilled safety culture, that top down culture that will breed a safe moment for that worker to go, I know that I'm taken care of in this company and that people care about my well being. And they're not going to go, what do you mean you can't work tomorrow? I only have 5 guys for that. What are you talking about? Oh, I can't believe you hurt yourself. If you
Yeah.
have guys who aren't afraid, they will always speak up. And that's part of that top down safety culture. You're creating that safe environment for them.
Yeah, and in a report, let someone know, hey, it happened, but I'm
Exactly.
okay. Don't ignore it. Don't, let your supervisor, foreman know it happened. So it creates a little bit of a record as well when it comes to have to do the paperwork.
And hey, a near miss is a positive thing. You think it's
Yes.
not a positive thing, it sure is. Let's have a near miss with open communication and learning moments rather than have somebody just, you know, keep that quiet.
So what is a near miss?
So a near miss is like, okay, if if Joe's up 20 feet on the edge of a roof and he's got all his tools laid out there and he's working, he's properly tied off, he's doing the right thing. Well, his hammer slips off the roof and falls, you know, 6 stories down and lands in his exclusion zone that was all roped off, so no one goes in there. But what happened? Well, that's still that's still considered a near miss to a lot of construction companies, and they want that written up so we can talk about how did that hammer find its way to the edge. You know, how what can we do in the future to secure your tools? Maybe tether that tool. Maybe you know, have your tools set over 6 feet back from the edge. You know, things. I mean, there's an endless amount of learning
Right.
moments that come from recording those near misses. And I just had a meeting with a safety professional from Turner Construction yesterday, as a matter of fact. And you know, he had a really good point. He said, you know, we record a lot of near misses, and how is that perceived by your owner, by San Francisco International Airport? Because you know, we are going to list those on our incident reporting, and it'll say near miss. And what we do with the project management and the PMSS teams and all of our upper management at SFO is we constantly stress to them that near misses are not recordable injuries. And just because you see a near miss, that does not mean that a job site is suffering. That means that there is open communication out there. Now, if you have a bunch of recordables and you have a bunch of problems on a job site and there's 40 near misses, well, you know, that points to a different thing. But if you have a construction company with a really good safety program and they're recording their near misses for learning moments, that's a positive. It's not a negative.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
So on the training front, as the owners of your company, that is required by you. You know, you have to make sure that your employees are trained properly to do the work that they're doing. I think that toolbox talks are really important. And as Robert said, you know, show up. Even if you're the owner and you don't hit a lot of your job sites, you know, show up to some of those toolbox talks. Maybe even give a toolbox talk. And you know, there's about 750,000 toolbox topics out there that you can choose from to touch base on, and some of it might be relevant to the work that you have going on that day. Some of it might not, you know, but
Mhm.
toolbox talks are a chance for everyone in the morning to take a breath, to think about safety, to go over your pre-task plans, your AHAs, your JHAs. It's really important. And then everyone gets sent off. And a lot of times, right after a toolbox talk, you know, some guys have the stretch and flex. and
Yeah.
things like that. You know, that's up to your company. You know, but that morning touch base on safety every single morning. Hey, everybody gather around. I don't care if you got 2 employees or 2,000. It's important that you know, on your job sites as a construction company, that you know, that you take every opportunity to talk about safety, whether it be in the morning, you know, or whenever. It shouldn't be a monthly thing. You know what I mean? So if if you have an orientation for your job site too, a site specific orientation, it's a really good thing to have. You know, a lot of the larger construction companies, you know, their orientations are huge. They're like an hour and a half. Um, I'm not saying you have to have that for a smaller job site, but if everyone, including inspectors and, you know, like people, that if you can give someone an orientation and give them a rundown of potential hazards on your job site before you let them enter, that's another way you can touch base on safety. And it's important to have orientations. Larger construction companies, the big boys, they will demand that you have an orientation, or they will demand you go to their orientation. But you know, it's a really good thing to start thinking about implementing if you don't already have that implemented in your safety program.
Yeah,
We,
what I would,
go ahead.
sorry, Tony, I was just
No,
saying, with the orientation, some of these public agencies require you to
you
take
bet.
their safety orientation before you
You bet.
step foot on their project
I mean,
property.
almost all of them do.
Yes.
And you know, it's dangerous places, and they're all unique. So um, you know, it's the same way out at SFO. Every single large contractor, whether it be Skanska or Hensel Phelps or Turner or any of those big guys, you cannot, if you don't have that sticker on your hard hat, or if you don't have that badge, you know, their orientation badge, you know, you're getting big trouble if you're out on that site. And sometimes you get booted off and you don't get invited to return.
Yep.
So, you know, it's important to go to those orientations and to create your own.
Yep.
Next slide.
Okay.
So, cutting corners and safety. It will never ever pay off for you. As much as you think it might save you money, it will cost you 10 to 100 fold in the end later on down the line. Production is never ever, production and profit, I will say, is never more important than people, than a human life, no matter how you slice it, anytime. You know, the short term things that can happen when you're cutting corners are obviously physical injuries and even fatalities. But you know, you can run into some big troubles later down the line too. If you expose your employees to something, it can create chronic health issues from that exposure or those unsafe conditions. And what does that lead to? That leads to legal issues. That leads to OSHA issues. That leads to insurance issues and higher insurance costs. You know, OSHA recordable injuries. I think we've talked about it enough today, where you should understand how important it is to not have OSHA recordables. And you can manage those incidents when they happen. A lot of those small incidents should never be recordable. And sometimes you can't avoid the recordable injury other than having a better safety culture and preparing for those incidents that you prevented because you increased your safety culture by so much and made it safety such a big deal on your job site that you're actually saving people injury and potentially saving lives out there. And you know, something that leads to a lot of injuries out there is a decline in employee morale, and that can be mental health issues. That can lead to way less productivity, and you know, it can break down a safety culture that you might have built up. So you know, you want to be very cognizant of that. You know, I mean, safety is the most important thing on your job site. You know, yes, you got to meet that bottom line, but don't risk lives to do it.
Yeah,
And
and it also is, if you're working overtime and stuff, your guys are getting tired.
yes,
Your guard comes down and you're gonna get hurt
and
too.
it's I there was a drywall company that was working at SFO when we built the Hyatt Hotel out there, and I had found out through uh, how I found out that they were working another job during the day, and then they were all coming out to SFO at night and working that job and trying to keep that under wraps. So these poor guys, their upper management was saying it was totally great that they worked an 8-hour day and then came and worked an 8-hour night, and maybe got a couple hours of sleep at most, often in their vehicle, and then they were just running this circle. And we finally were able to shut that down, through the controlling contractor for that specific job. But those guys were like zombies. I mean, we had 2 guys fall off of Perry scaffolds, and it was just a terrible position for those workers to be in, whether they wanted to make the money or not. The money wasn't worth it, and their supervision did not have that top-down safety approach, and they weren't caring a lot about the workers at that point. So just an example of exactly what Robert's talking about. Sometimes people think racking up those hours is great, and it's awesome for the pocketbook, but it can put you in harm's way. The other thing is losing those bids. Once you have a bunch of recordables and your experience modification rates through the roof, your insurance rates are through the roof, it doesn't matter. Those larger companies and those programs, they take a look at your OSHA 300 log, and they look at your recordable injuries and your XMOD rate, and it's a big no. Like you can really save yourself some, and it's years to get that stuff off. It's not a quick thing. And I've seen companies go under because of it, especially the smaller ones who can't afford to be out of business, can't afford to not get that job. They just disappear. So it's real important to take all this stuff seriously, because it can mean if you're one of those smaller guys out there fighting for every scrap, it can really, really mean the difference.
Right. And those OSHA violations, that can hurt you too. You can
It hurt your
report
pocketbook.
other
It can
companies.
hurt everything.
Yeah. I mean, you can report other companies this for unsafe. If you're a pedestrian walking by, you can call up OSHA. Hey, I see this job site going on. There's unsafe, they're using a cherry picker and having people hanging from it and stuff like that.
Exactly. I was breathing in this dust. It hurt my lungs. It burned my
Right.
eyes. But
Silica.
yeah, silica, anything can be something. And don't be too freaked out if OSHA comes and hits your job site. Meet them and give them everything that they want, and have open arms, and make sure that they know that that's a learning moment for you if you've never had OSHA out to your job site. Because if you're in construction, you will at some point, I guarantee it.
Yep.
And don't push them off too much, or be cold, and try to limit information that you're giving them, because if they find out later, then you're even in much bigger trouble than you thought you were before.
Yeah, they shut the job down.
You got it.
Yes. Yeah, so you're not in control.
Nope.
So, Tony, this is kind of like our last slide here. So, I mean, if you want to give some do's and don'ts, some lessons learned here, as we're going to be turning it back over to Johanna in a few minutes, and then see if we can answer some more questions.
I'm good. I think we've covered quite a bit. I'm sure people are sick of hearing my voice at this point.
Okay. All right. Well, Tony, thank you so much for doing this. I love working with you and doing these kind of presentations. So, Johanna, I'm now going to turn it back over to you.
Okay. Currently, there are no questions, so I think that's a wrap. So thank you, everyone, for attending. We appreciate your attendance on this very important topic. Please fill out the survey so that we can provide you with a copy of the presentation and a link to the webinar video. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Bye.